Well, hey, you guys. Here I am back once again with another Flickers of Fear. Sorry I haven't done one in a couple of weeks. I got really busy with other work and I didn't really have time to do one of these. Matter of fact, this movie here, I actually watched it probably like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and I've been wanting to review it like all this time, but I just haven't had time. But I'm finally getting around to it. So, as most viewers of this channel will know, I definitely love my old horror movies. I'm an old school horror girl, but I also try fairly hard, like as time allows, to keep up with some of the kind of more buzzed about new ones coming out because I do genuinely believe that we're kind of in a golden age of horror and have been, like, maybe for the past at least decade, probably more, maybe even 20 years. Some of the best horror films ever, I think, have come out in like the last 10 or 20 years. So when I started seeing different horror reviewers and stuff like that, like other people in the horror community, kind of talking up this New Zealand shot psychological horror called The Rule of Jenny Penn. This actually premiered at Fantastic Fest back in September of 2024, and it recently dropped on Shudder. Like, when I heard about that, I was like, I knew I would have to check it out. And especially after I found out that two great veteran actors, Geoffrey Rush and John Lithgow, were playing the lead roles. So this movie was actually directed by James Ashcroft and was based on a short story by someone I believe is a New Zealand writer named Owen Marshall. So I'm going to say right out of the gate, I loved this movie. It's unsettling, it's kind of messed up, and it's has like kind of a blackly comedic edge to it, to the point that it almost, but not quite, like spills over into camp. And I think that was kind of one of the best things about it, or one of the things I liked best about it. Now, I will note, like, numerous reviewers have pointed out its thematic similarity to kind of classic, hagsploitation films, like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, for example. Only this one is focused on old men rather than old women. And I found this a very astute comparison. And I'd be willing to bet that if you were into those kinds of movies, you will probably adore this. And I'll also note that, I mean, in a career of just outstanding performances, I mean, John Lithgow completely kills it here. I mean, Geoffrey Rush is great too, but like John Lithgow like fucking carries this movie. I feel like this might be one of his best roles to date. He's completely unhinged and terrifying, and he's just mesmerizing to watch. Oh, and just an aside, I'm kind of curious about this. If there are any native New Zealanders watching this, how accurate was John Lithgow's Kiwi accent? It actually sounded really good to me, and I'm the kind of person who has a hard time watching any actor doing an accent that isn't their own, even if they do it perfectly, just because it's too distracting for me, because I know that they don't really talk like that, and that's always like in the back of my head. But Lithgow's accent was like not distracting to me at all, and I didn't even like notice it after a while. Like, I'm not from New Zealand though, obviously, so I'm not the best arbiter of whether he nailed it or not, but like to me it sounded good, but I don't know. So anyway, the setup of The Rule of Jenny Penn goes like this. Geoffrey Rush plays a judge named Stefan Mortensen. And at the beginning of the movie, he is kind of pronouncing a sentence in what you're led to assume is like a particularly like horrific child abuse case. And he's kind of reading the riot act to like the defendants or whatever. Partway through his pronouncements, though, he collapses onto the floor. He's had a stroke. So he's left partially paralyzed by the stroke, and he's taken to this place called the Royal Pine Mews Care Home to recover. Now, he believes that he's only going to be in the facility for a short time before getting back to his, big time, very important life. And because of that, he really doesn't make much of a secret of the just utter contempt that he feels for the other residents. And when he's there, he's kind of trying to maintain his former dignity and his former authority in the face of his own physical deterioration and the kind of, infantilizing attitudes of the care home employees, who obviously kind of treat everyone like they're sort of toddlers because, a lot of them are very old, and that's kind of what they act like. Now, Stefan is actually a fascinating character and protagonist because he's almost completely unlikable. Like, he's an unrepentant snob. I mean, he clearly thinks everyone else is beneath him. Like, he's, reading all these highfalutin books and everything like that, and he's just very condescending. It's obvious that he's, because of his profession and, the status that he had in his former life, that he's very used to bossing everyone around and getting his own way. You know what I mean? So watching him being forced into a situation where he suddenly doesn't have any power and all of his previous accomplishments just don't mean anything to anybody anymore is pretty disquieting on its own. Especially, I think, since many of us will, unfortunately, be able to relate to his predicament someday. And I feel like in this movie, the inherent horror and maybe like grotesquerie of aging, like the physical process of aging, and the mental process of aging too, like as you kind of lose your mental faculties, I think it does a lot of the heavy lifting here. And, you know, as I mentioned, it really ramps up the disturbing nature of the story quite a lot because it's something that happens to everyone and something that pretty much everyone fears to some extent. Like, nobody wants to have a completely functional mind trapped inside an almost useless body and to be seen as like just this bothersome burden to everyone around them. And there's something even more frightening about it when, you know, you were seen as something of like a big deal, like back in your day, as, you know, the main character here, Stefan, was. But now he's just another grumpy old man in a wheelchair who's constantly bitching and complaining and has a hard time feeding and bathing himself. In a sort of teaser of things to come, not long after he arrives at the care home, Stefan is out on the patio talking to another resident whose name is Howie. And Howie accidentally, like, he has a flask and he's drinking out of the flask and stuff, and he kind of spills alcohol on himself, and then he drops a cigarette on himself and sets himself on fire. And he basically just sits there in his wheelchair and burns to death. And because Stefan is largely immobile because of the stroke, he's in a wheelchair himself, he can really only watch helplessly as the man just dies screaming, like, right in front of him. This care home, by the way, I feel the need to mention this, also has a resident kitty cat, who it's rumored, and this has, you know, been documented in a few cases, that the cat can sense when one of the old folks is about to die. Like, it will go visit the room and sit on the bed and everything like that. And you're like, oh, they're going to get it. You know what I mean? Now, there are several scenes with the cat that made me very, very anxious because it seemed like something really bad was going to happen to her. But spoiler alert, thank God, nothing does. And I was just kind of like, man, thank you, movie, for not killing the adorable kitty cat, because I was really worried about her for a while there. So a little while after this incident, and after Stefan kind of gets settled in, he meets another resident, inmate, whatever you might call it, at the care home, whose name is Dave Creeley, and that is John Lithgow's character. And he's kind of an eccentric weirdo who always wears this super creepy, like, baby doll hand puppet, like, on his hand. And the puppet's name is Jenny Penn. And sometimes he voices her like he's a ventriloquist dummy, like he'll do her voice and stuff. I believe he got the name from some kind of, like, because he plays an old, like, kind of vaudevillian-esque record later on in the movie that either the singer or the song was about somebody named Jenny Penn or something like that. So I think that's where he named the doll from. Now, at first, Dave just seems kind of strange, not overtly threatening. He's like a little bit of a jerk, but he's also plainly, like, not all there mentally. However, Stefan soon begins to fathom the depths of Dave's psychopathy. You see, despite his strenuous objections, Stefan has been placed in a shared room. Now, the employees there very patiently explain to him that it's like, that's the only kind we have. All of the rooms are shared rooms, because Stefan obviously is making a stink about wanting a private room. Do you know who I am? He's being very Karen about it. And they're like, look, everyone shares a room. Just, like, shut the fuck up. Now, Stefan's roommate is this once quite famous retired rugby player named Tony Garfield. And Stefan sees him, again, like he sees most of the other residents in this, like, as something of like a dumb brute, I guess. One night, though, as they're both kind of settling into sleep, Stefan is quite sure that he sees Dave sitting in a chair in the darkness in the corner of his room, and he sees the doll, Jenny Penn, like, with this, she has, like, these no eyes, so it's like a hollow eye, and the light kind of shines through her rubber head because it's hollow. And so he sees, like, this creepy kind of, the little bit of light is, like, coming through the eye holes, and it's, like, super creepy. Now, he can't figure out how Dave might have gotten into their room, because I would assume they're all locked at night. But when he complains about it to the staff, they tell him, oh, you must have just imagined it. Like, he doesn't do that kind of stuff. But the torment kind of ramps up over successive nights as Dave repeatedly, like, slips into their room, like, after lights out. Now, at first, it seems like he's getting his jollies by fucking with Tony in the bed across the room, while Stefan is just kind of in the other bed, like, forced to watch what's going on and not being able to do anything about it because he can't really move. Like, at one point, Dave throws, like, a bottle full of piss over Tony, and he also forces Tony to lick Jenny Penn's asshole. Like, that's what he calls it. He's like, lick her asshole, you know what I mean? It's really his own wrist, obviously, because she's a hand puppet. But he does that to kind of demonstrate that he's getting him to submit to Jenny Penn's rule. Now, Stefan is watching all this, and he can't really understand why such a, you're led to believe, you know, formerly formidable athlete would allow himself to be debased like that. But Tony has been at the care home, like, a lot longer, and he knows that worse shit will happen to him, perhaps even being smothered to death, you're led to assume, if he doesn't do exactly what Dave wants him to do. And as the story goes on, it starts to become clear that the other residents of the place are all terrified of Dave and these malicious antics that he gets up to. But they all kind of keep silent about it because none of the staff really ever believed them, so they just gave up, you know what I mean? Now, Dave, it turns out, has been at Royal Pine Mews care home for decades. Like, he first worked there, like, as a young man. He worked there as an employee, and then later on, as he got older, he moved in and became a resident. So he's familiar with every inch of the place, and he knows exactly how to manipulate the staff into thinking he's just a harmless old man. So I don't want to spoil too much of the stuff that Dave does, because it's better to just watch the movie and find out for yourself. But suffice it to say that much deeper levels of depravity are revealed as time goes on. And Stefan ultimately realizes that he and Tony are going to have to make a stand against Dave and Jenny's tyranny at some stage, even though their bodies and minds are kind of falling apart at the same time. So yeah, this was just an excellent, very engaging film, and I think it was, like, really grounded by these two kind of powerhouse performances, and it had a real sense of escalating tension to it. Like, Dave was such a lunatic that you were never quite sure what he would get up to next, because he was so fucking crazy, and that just really kept you riveted to the screen, like, holy shit, what's this dude's gonna do now? And the conflict between Stefan's kind of deteriorating but still very potent sense of justice and righteousness, you know, kind of juxtaposed against Dave's chaotic, like, malevolence was, like, really, really well done. Now, I would also be remiss if I didn't point out the just excellent cinematography. It gives the rooms and the corridors of the care home, as well as the kind of wrinkled, like, old people faces of the residents, like, a really skewed and almost, like, circus-like, just kind of eerie vibe. And I think that, like, contributes a lot to the atmosphere of the movie as a whole. So, as I said, if you're a fan at all of, like, hagsploitation style cinema, and maybe even something like Bubba Hotep, which is a lot wackier than this, but explores a little bit of the same territory, then I would definitely recommend this movie. It's a very effective psychological horror, and it goes into, you know, just the horrors of aging, and it really kind of, like, showcases the just fantastic performances of its two lead actors. So it's just, like, a great, great film. I liked this a lot. So that will do it for this review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.